history in my family of anything. So it was very confusing. And then it didn't stop there. So then we ended up we had many years of in and out with the hospital because then she ended up having a growth hormone issue. They warned us that she had, first of all, she was diagnosed with septo-optic dysplasia, which means like the septa pellucidum, which is the midline of the brain, happens to be missing, which also helps to control what your messages coming out of the brain. So she wasn't also like the messages were not coming through the brain for her to see. Like we're able to see because our brain is telling us to do so.
Mm-hmm.
So she wasn't able to do it. So from there, they told me that she might also suffer from seizures and that she might have a growth hormone issue, and she ended up having all of them. So when she was one, she ended up having her first seizure, and we went back to the hospital. We were admitted for like a whole entire week. They did a bunch of extensive testing and all this kind of stuff. And it just became really, really like a whole roller coaster for a good year and a half. We
Well,
had to
wait,
put her
wait
on.
a minute. I have a question. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
please.
Because I know that this is your story that you've probably told it a million times, but I just got to ask questions. I'm sorry.
Please.
Um, when you found this out initially, what was were you just more like, okay, so what do we do? Or
Yes.
were you like sad? Like, what were your emotions?
I think I was more so shocked. So I have been a pretty I like to say it's emotionally crippled because I feel that courage comes from feeling, and I've always been very guarded my whole life. I think now that I've been focusing more in my life on personal development and beefing up my mindset, now I feel like I can feel more. I even had my
Mm,
sister tell me the other day, you seem to be a little more emotional as far as being empathetic towards human beings and wanting to like help people and wanting to help people change lives. Like that's what I'm saying is that when I grew up, even my parents were kind of like, whoa, because I had just a more stronger like personality that was just like, like a little prickly, rough around the edges. And having Gabby helped humble me up. And when I
mhm.
had Gabby, I started to soften up a little bit, but I still was very guarded. And I don't know, like when my mom told me, I guess I was in a lot of shock because I was like, blind? What? Like, you didn't expect to hear that. You know
No.
what I mean?
Mm-mm.
So I felt, and I don't know why, with my mom, like, I don't know, like, I just couldn't really get emotional when she told me I couldn't. I couldn't. My family found out. They were all in like this big circle of depression. And I was just like, guys, like, what are we gonna do?
I
I
would have been
can't do
like
anything.
that. I would have
Like
been
I
like
can't
that
do
too.
anything. What am I
Hmm.
supposed to do?
Mm.
I feel you.
Crying, getting depressed, falling on the
Hmm.
floor is not going to change the situation. Like I have to figure out
Hmm.
now what's the next step. I have to
Hmm.
get therapy. I have to like figure out what do I do? Like what do I do? You know what I mean? Like I just didn't know what to do. So it was more about getting the right resources to help me so that I could help Gabby. So that's all that was in my mind. You know what I mean? Of course, I had, even like her father had a rough time in the hospital, and he was just like crying, and he's like, How? How are you taking all this information and you're just completely stoic? And I'm like, What am I
Hmm.
going to do? Like, it sucks, But I recently had like a complete break when it came to Gabby, but I mean that's fast forwarding like 12 years. You know what I mean? Because we had a lot of
Right.
traumatic events that happened in December with luckily she's okay now, but it was a rough holiday season. Like we were in the hospital. It was really rough. So but yeah, we went to the hospital. She had a bunch of tests done. We started her on medication. I did not know any better. I'm not really one for medication. I like more natural things, but it's very difficult with seizures. Like seizures is a very, very broad spectrum disease that is very difficult to control. And epilepsy is just one of those things. Like you look it up and it's like you ask doctors and they're just like We don't know, and for a lot of them, it's very easy to just slap on the medication. You know what I mean? That just helps them. It's quicker versus doing other more holistic type of things. So we started her medication, and she didn't have any kind of physical seizure activity for a while. And then she started having some spasms. Like they were more like little ticks, that she would have. And I'm like, this is so strange. So I went back to a neurologist, and they did like an EEG, which is just like a video of the brain waves. And they noticed that her brainwave activity had like increased. So we started trialing with all these different medications, and it was horrible. It was horrible. She literally just, you know, was on so many meds, and she was like a zombie. And I was
Mm.
miserable. I was miserable. All she did was sleep. Oh, it was horrible. And I'm like, this is so sad. Like, this isn't life. You know what I mean? This is just not life. But she was still having seizures while on it. So I'm like, so after a few years, when she turned 6, I started a trial um, at the hospital. And the hospital was able to, Miami Children's, based in Miami, is one of the best hospitals for children who, especially, they have like a brain institute there. So they started her on a trial for CBD. So we started doing the CBD oil, and it didn't help as much, but it was more, I guess, like it was a synthetic type of CBD, not like from the actual like plant
Mm-hmm.
derived type of CBD. So point blank, it wasn't getting worse, it wasn't getting better. So I'm like, can we start weaning her off the medication? Because even on the medication, she wasn't getting worse, but she wasn't getting better. So I'm like thinking, can we give her kidneys a break, her liver a break? Like, can we just see what happens? Let's just see what happens. So we started weaning her off the medication, and she remained the same. So it was kind of like it didn't get worse. That was my biggest thing. So she would have sporadic like spasms, and it's rough because she's so dependent. Like she has to always be like on top of you. You have to always be holding her, because otherwise we run the risk of her falling. Because what if she has a spasm or something? You know what I mean? So it becomes very, very, very difficult, because I can't turn 1 inch without her being there. You know what I mean? Um, so that was rough. And then we started trialing some other CBDs for a while, and they started working, and she started doing better. And as soon as we started getting off the medication, her mood was amazing. She was alive again. She was talking. She was just, oh, it was perfect. It was like literally night and day. The school was reporting that she was actually working, and it was just such a great vibe and such a good change. And the best thing was that she wasn't getting worse. Then she started having this issue with her foot. So there's something called dystonia, where like I don't know if you know about it, but it's typically where like it affects the extremities usually, and it stiffens up your extremities. So her foot is turned inward like this, and it's neurological, and it just started to do that. So she had to start wearing a brace. And unfortunately, that's a rough thing, because without the brace, she can't walk, because she can't flatten her foot. So she'll break her ankle because it's so twisted. So that's a big thing on me also, because I'm like, now anytime it's like I was having to carry her and hold her and transfer her everywhere I had to go. So then we fast forward over to her turning 12, and she, leading up to turning 12, had started having these weird emotional mood swings. And I was just like, what is going on? Because the doctor had told me, the growth hormone doctor had told me that she probably wouldn't be menstruating for a little bit, because her hormones were probably out of whack. So I'm like, okay. But then she started acting so like hormonal, and she ended up getting her cycle. So once she got her cycle, everything got out of control. Like she started having seizures like crazy.
Oh.
I would find her crying on the floor in the middle of the night. She had her own room. And I'm like, why is she on the floor? She never gets on the floor. Like, she always sleeps great. She's never not, you know what I mean? It was just so weird to me. So then one night I ended up laying with her because it started getting to the point where when she would go to sleep, she was almost like scared, like she had anxiety. And I didn't understand what it was. Or my kid doesn't have nightmares. And there would be nights where she would wake up screaming, but like that scream get like she was like afraid, you know?
Mm.
So one night I slept with her, I laid with her in the bed, and I feel her starting to have like these weird like convulsions, which were not like her normal one little spasm. Now it was like full body. And I'm like, oh no, because there's different categories of seizures. So she was having spasms and now she was having general tonic, like grand mal seizures, like the ones that you're like drooling, your can like your respiratory can be compromised and you're like nonstop convulsing and you can really hurt yourself. And for me, that was scary because I started thinking, oh my God, she has been alone. And that's probably why she ended up on the floor. She may have had convulsions that knocked her on the floor. She may like, so she started going through all these things and I felt horrible because I was like, oh my God, like, what do I do now? Because she had already been at this point, just to add, 5 years without any medication. So now I'm thinking, yeah, and it took me forever to wean her off. So now I'm thinking, great. If I go back to neurology, which I had to, it was like no other choice, they're going to
Right.
say she needs meds. She needs meds. So I was like, oh my God, what do I do? So October of last year, I went back to neurology and I explained what was going on. And sure enough, they're like, she needs medication. And I was like, I don't want to put her on medication. There has to be another way. And there was this form, once again, they brought back what was called Epidiolex, which I know a lot of families have their children on it for seizures. And it has worked for some. It didn't work for Gabby. So I was like, let's just try it because it's considered a medication now. I was like, let me try it again. It's been so many years. Maybe they changed the formula. Maybe it'll work. It's more natural than giving her a benzo or something that's going to make her kind of like loopy, you know? Because for me, my biggest fear was like, great, now I'm not going to have my kid anymore. She's going to be back to being a
Yeah.
zombie. She's going to be back to like not wanting to do anything in school. So we started trying that. It wasn't working. And then we started hearing the cries and stuff in the middle of the night here because we ended up moving and she has her own room. But again, it wasn't something that was happening every night. So we weren't really sure what was going on. And I had never really physically seen it. So I only felt it that one night, but it was just a few seconds. Like it didn't last too long. So it was still kind of like confusing. But one night it was Labor Day weekend. I'll never forget. It was Labor Day weekend and we had gotten home and she was a little bit awake just from being at my brother's house. So we got home like at 11. And you know when kids get restless, like they pass the threshold, so now you're like, "Oh great." So I laid in bed with her. I ended up falling asleep and then I get woken up like at 3 in the morning with her whole body really convulsing and like head twisting and not breathing right. And I was like first time I saw it, I get chills just remembering it. First time I saw an actual grand mal happening with my child, and I was just like, oh no, this is not okay. Every single night, the second she closed her eyes, she would not stop. She would not stop twitching. She would have seizures. I was becoming so desperate. This happened. I would sleep with her every single night. And, and then finally in October, I bought a very expensive seizure monitor camera that like goes above her like area where her TV is and it focuses on her. So it works on infrared light. So when she is having any kind of weird movement, whether she's sitting up and trying to move or get off the bed, the alarm goes off and goes straight to my phone. So it wakes me up. So that way I'm alerted and I can go make sure she's okay because seizures are so critical. The reason why they even came up with a lot of foundations for these type of cameras, which mind you I was never told about, like the doctors have never told me about this, which is something, it's a safety feature, and their thing
Yes.
was, well, not all families can afford it. That's
Mm-hmm.
not your problem to figure out. You should totally share the news. Trust me, I would have done whatever I had to do to get it. And I did. I literally purchased the camera because for me, I was like, you read stories, and parents have said who run foundations for this camera have literally talked about walking into their room to see their 7-year-old lifeless